What is up guys, in this video I'm gonna show you a breakdown of an emotional house track, I guess, that I made in FL Studio. This is how it sounds. Ready? Let's jump straight into the project. Okay, so we have the full project here. In the top we see some automation on the master bus. I'm gonna touch upon that later. And then I have done my best to really sort out everything with color codes and also naming my clips the right way, because then it's easier to stay organized and also help my OCD a little bit. So in the top you see all of the instruments, which are synths, pianos, arpeggiators, small melodies, and so on. Next we have a bass line, and then we have all of the drum elements. I have a kick drum, claps, hi-hats, etc. And then I have some automation down here. Then I have a lot of vocal stuff going on, a lot of chops, background vocals, effects, reversed reverb effects, and also a little bit of a main vocal sample here. And then in the bottom I have a lot of these SFX sounds, which are like textures, small fills, rises, sweeps and stuff. I'm gonna go through them broadly, but not really much in depth, because there's like a lot, so we can spend too much time on this. So I'm thinking of just like highlighting a section of the drop, and then we can just play it back, and then I can go through each of the elements. So I'm thinking of going through let's just highlight drop 2, part A. So I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so we can see everything. So the first thing that I have is this mallet sound here. And I've actually bounced this to audio because it was a little bit easier for me to work with, and it was also a little bit CPU heavy. But you can see this is the MIDI file of the mallets. So really like fast and choppy. And I have also added some swing quantization to it. So if we zoom in, you can see like these chords are not straight on the grid, and that's how it gets like that kind of groovy vibe to it. And I really like to like play around with swing and put my elements off the grid. But we can go in and see like this is made in Analog Lab 5. I believe this is the DX7 plugin. We can try to play it. Yeah, and it doesn't have any like effects on it, but I just bounced this like to audio, and then I have like this file here. And then we can go to the mixer track to see some of the effects that I have applied. And again, for organization purposes, I have also color coded everything so we can stay organized and move really quickly throughout the session. So on this mallet bus, I have my trusty Guitar X6. Just gonna make this a little bit smaller. So this is basically a delay put to 1/8. And set to wide because it gets like a little bit more stereo feel. And then I try to play around with this tape echo effect, and then modulating the speed knob of the tape echo with this LFO down here, and it's set to random. So it's just randomly adding some modulation amount to this knob here. And what it gives is like, it gives that kind of like small spin back effect. So we get like some kind of wobble feel to the sound. But it's just set at like really low volume, so it's not obvious, but it just adds a little bit. I can try to just turn off the effect here so you can hear what it does. It's adding like a lot of stereo effect and also like kind of the sense of some reverb effects to it. So that's the reason why I haven't actually added reverb to this sound, because the delay is doing like what I want with in terms of reverb. Then I have a fruity filter, and this is just for automation's sake. So it's done on, it's this, I think it's actually just this part here for like a build-up thing here. So it's just like a low pass just to drive some of the melodies into the drop 1 for like a build-up. So let's go back into the mixer track. Then I have neutron 3, and I'm using it for EQ. So you can see like this EQ curve here. I removed a lot of the low end because it was unnecessary and will clash with the bass, which we're going to touch upon later. And also removing a little bit of the top end and then boosting like this 6K area here and also this 2K area here, and then reducing a little bit in this 400 Hertz area because I was thinking it added like a little bit of muddiness to the sound. And then I added a transient shaper just to push the attacks and the transient of the sound so it gets a little bit more pluggy. But really like just a small amount. I don't want to overdo it. Then I have the fruity balance here, and it's also just for automation purposes for the build-up, just to start with a really low volume and then gradually turn it up. And then the last plugin is Fruity Limiter, but it's not acting as limiter, it's acting as a sidechain compressor tool, whatever you can call it. And I'm using my Kickdrum to sidechain this mallet sound. And I'm actually using the Kickdrum as a sidechain trigger for a lot of the sounds in this track because I want to drive forth the transient of the Kickdrum. So you can see down here, it shows like the routing, and it's routed to the mallets, and then you can go into the limiter. You can select the Kickdrum as the input trigger of the sidechaining, and then I'm using these settings here, and then it's docking every time the Kickdrum hits. So we can just go back into the playlist, enable the Kickdrum, then we can play back. And you can see like the sound is being ducked down by the Kickdrum. So it's a really nice effect. So if we move a little bit further, I have just like a reversed reverb effect for the mallets. I just took this first part of the mallet here, and then I cut it out, added a ton of reverb to it, and then exported it to audio, and just reversed the file, and then you get something like this. And this is just great to like use as a transitional effect. So really, really great. I will really encourage you to try this out. And remember, if you want to get access to this project file, you can go to my membership site via the link in the description and get access to it. So we're gonna move a little bit further. So for the automation, I also have like a synth delay effect, which is this one over here. And this is just with the basic delay from FL Studio, and then add a little bit of EQ just to move low end and also some of the high end. And this is basically just being done to automate sometimes for like transitional stuff. So going from one section into another. So it's just adding some delays to the mallets. Let me see if I can, just to generate like that tail so everything just blends together a little bit more nicely. Okay, so now we can move on to the next element, and that's the piano. So we're gonna take this breakdown bit here, just solo it. So we have like this really mellow piano. And it's coming from, let me see, yeah, the Piano 5 from Arpeggiator. And it's just really, really nice sounding piano. And I just bounced it to audio because it's a little bit more easy to work with for me. And in terms of effects, we can just go here to the piano. I actually don't have any effects on it because the sound that was coming out of the plugin was really nice on itself. So it's just being routed to my instrument bus, and I'll go through that later. So sometimes you don't have to add like a ton of effects just for the sake of it. Just listen to the sound. If it sounds nice, just move on. That's my tip of advice. And then below I just have like the MIDI for the piano if I were to like change stuff or add another sound. And then I just added like an extra cool effect for the build-up. So I just chopped out like this chord hit here and just duplicated it and repeated it and just made it shorter for like this kind of effect here. Yeah, just to like create some tension, I guess. Next, we're gonna go to a melody fill. So this is just like a small thing just going in between. So it's like a call and response. So I have other elements which acts as like the response. I have this chord step down here. And also like another chord step here. And these strings down here as well. And I think it works really well to have like different elements that does something to the melody. So it's playing like small bits of a melody, and you just have some other sound to play another kind of melody, another riff, and it can really add some character to your sounds. So like together with the mallets, it just adds like a little bit like top sparkle on top of the mallets, and I think it sounds really nice. We can just broadly go through these sounds. So for this melody fill, I actually just have a sidechain component from Shaperbox, volume shaper, just for like tiny amount of sidechaining. And I believe this melody fill is done in Serum. It's actually one of my preset packs. You can also check it out via link in the description. And it's just like, yeah, just like a really like pluggy kind of sound with some reverb and delay within Serum. But it just sounded nice, so I just moved on. And then I think like for this chord step down here, I think there is like some EQ, move low end, a little bit of the high end, and some reverb to add like a tail and a sense of being in a stereo field. And then I think, yeah, and sidechaining, and also some panning in Shaperbox just to make like a little bit more like off synced panning pattern, so the sound is moving from left to right in this like really creative, crazy pattern, but it just adds a lot of movement to the sound. And like I think these chord steps down here actually are bounced from an Arpeggiator plugin, and it's just being routed into the same mixer channel as the other chord step. And then I have like these synth strings as well, and they also just have some sidechaining on it. And I think I like the sound. It's also from Arpeggiator, and it's just like a really high pad sound. And what I like to do is just bounce out stuff, because then I can go back and tweak a lot of stuff and avoid me getting like further with the production. Because if I just found something that sounds nice, I can just print it to audio, and then I can move on to the next bits of the track, instead of just sticking and with the same component and trying to like perfect the sound. Because then you get stuck into the small details instead of thinking like in the bigger picture of like how you can turn this into an actual track. So yeah, that was like my production choice. So these are actually all of the instrumental components, and they are routed to an instrument bus. And this is this one. And on the instrument bus, I don't do anything like really crazy. I add a solid bus compressor from Native Instruments. If you're in Ableton, you can use, I think it's called the Glue, or use other like compressors. But this is just to just gel together stuff, so it sounds a little bit more joined together. So there is not a lot of makeup gain, like just a tiny amount of threshold, and the gain reduction is just around like -1-2 dB, because I don't want to do anything crazy. And I had a little bit of EQ, so removing low end to make space for the bass line. And then I could hear that there was like lacking a little bit of energy in this area, so I just boosted it for this band here. And then you have like all of these elements. Yeah, and then lastly I have again like the Fruity limiter for sidechaining, and it's just to like make space for the kick drum, so it's just docking a little bit. So yeah, now we're ready to move to the bass line. Like a really cool bass line that has like some chorus through it, and this is done in Serum, also one of my presets. And I think like, yeah, there's like this hyper thing on the effects. So yeah, this was just like a really cool bassline sound, and it just immediately fit well together with the mallets and the bassline. So if we go into the mixer track, we can actually just start like by jumping into the MIDI, so you can see like the MIDI pattern. And I believe this is following the root note of the chords of the mallet, but not the piano. I don't know why I did this, but it just sounded nice in my opinion, and I just stick with it. So for this bass line, you can see like, again, it's also really choppy as the mallets, and also using the same like swing offbeat, like it's off the grid. So you can see everything is like a little bit more like loose to it. So that's how it gives it like that groovy kind of feel to it. And also like I just like to have like the velocity also like a little bit random. It gives a little more life to the bass instead of it having to be like one steady like note and steady level. So for the bass line, I actually didn't do that much. I just added like an EQ to remove the top end. And then again, you have like a limiter just to also dock the bass line according to the kick drum. And this is like a rather like heavy volume docking because I don't want the kick and bass to interfere with each other. So this is actually it for the bass line. I don't have like that much to it because the sound from Serum was just sounding pretty nice in my opinion. So I didn't want to do that much with it. So then we can move on to the drums, and we can start with the kick drum. And I think the kick drum is actually a sample from one of my sample packs called, I think it's the House Package Volume 1. Just like a standard kick drum with like some offbeat stuff happening. We can try to go to the, there's actually no processing on the kick drum because I like the processing that was on the sample. So the thing, what I'm doing, like, and I don't think a lot of people do this, but I actually route my kick and bass line into a low end bus. So I don't route my kick drum into a drum bus, but that's because I want to have full control over the low end. So I just route these to this mixer bus. Sometimes I will add some extra processing on, but in this instance I didn't do it because it was not necessary. But now I just have like, it's easier for me to like reduce like the low end heavy components with just one level slider. So that's why I do it. Okay, so we can keep like bass line and kick drum playing. Then I have like a clap, like a short one. And then I layered it with like another clap loop, just to give it like an extra texture to it. And hi-hat loop. Yeah, so we're like in house territory. And then we can just highlight this area. And then I added like a top loop with some shakers. Yeah, and these are just from Splice. I like to use samples from Splice. Then I have like this perk groove thing. And it's like a mixture of a lot of stuff like tambourine hits and small blocks, and extra tambourine hits. And this is just to add like an extra layer to like the drum loop. And also like playing with the stereo field. So they are like panned like really heavy to the right or to the left. And then down here I have a ride loop. And what's pretty cool with this ride loop is that I just added some auto panning to it, so it's like moving from left to right. And I'm just using the Panomatic from FL Studio. So you can see like it's just moving from left to right. And it's just adding like a sense of movement to the drums, and it's pretty amazing. Then I have like a breakbeat loop and a drum loop here. So I have this one. Really great for like the breakdown stuff. And then I have like this one, just to add like a little bit of texture together. And down here I have like a low pass filter automation on my drum bus, just to like slowly introduce them into the breakdown. And this is like a really effective and simple effect to use when you're trying to like build towards something. So for like the drums, I can just go into my drum bus and you can hear like what it's doing. So I've routed like all of my drum elements beside the kick drum into a drum bus. And I'm also using solid bus compressor just to glue stuff together. And I'm adding like Neutron 3. And here I'm again removing stuff that's not necessary for the drums to sound nice, and that's the low end because I want to have room for kick and bass. Then I'm boosting a little bit for this 4K area, and then I'm actually reducing like a little bit of like harshness in this area here, because I think it was like the hi-hats that was a little bit too harsh and was clashing with some other elements. So I just made a dip. So it's sounding pretty nice. It's adding like a lot of groove to the track.
Okay, I know you're enjoying this video right now, but I really need your help. Only 14% of you guys are subscribed to my YouTube channel, so do me a huge favor and smash that subscribe button for more awesome tutorials. That's all, thank you so much. Now let's get back to the video.
Okay, so now we're moving into maybe the most important element of this track, and that's the vocal chops. So this started with this vocal here. I'm just gonna turn the effects off. So it's this one, I think it's from Splice.
I'm being honest, how much I want this, I'm being honest.
Like a really like emotional sounding vocal. So what I did was that I took, for the vocal channel, I have a plugin called Little Alter Boy. And I'm just using this formant knob and just turning it down -5. And it just gives the track, the vocals like a little bit more like a darker tone to it.
I'm being honest, how much I want this, I'm being honest.
So going to like a filter just to remove low end. And then I have a delay.
I'm being honest.
Just to add like some extra movement and groove to the track. And then I have like a sidechain from Cable Guys.
I'm being honest, how much I want this.
Just to duck the signal. So this is like the main vocal. Then I also have like for the drop, like you can see here, drop 1 part A, I have like small snippets of the vocal.
I'm being honest, I make you want this.
And this is just to like reuse elements from the main vocal sample and then also have them in the drop. And you can see like this is going towards like drop 1 and also the drop 2. But then I have like a lot of stuff going on. So because I tried to mess around with this vocal sample as much as I could, and also introducing some other vocal samples as well. So I have this one, and it's pretty crazy. Okay, let's just listen to like the whole track, and you can hear it like. It's like so weird in a sense, but it makes sense. So how I made this was like, I think I had like the little alter boy on as well, and then I took the main vocal, and then I used this function called like chopping up the sample and using the beat shuffle. So it just makes random chops of the sample, and then I just try to build like a phrase that was interesting. And then I just printed this to audio, so I don't have like too many effects on it, and then I don't have to keep like the effect chain. And then I got this. And it's just adding like extra texture to the sound. And for processing wise, like afterwards I added like an exciter because the top end was lacking a little bit of energy. So this is what this does. I just split up the frequency band. So I'm only applying this effect on like 500 hertz and then upwards. And then for an EQ, I'm also boosting like a little bit of with like a high shelf, the top end. And then there were some like resonant like areas of the vocal that was like messing a little bit with the rest of the elements. So I just made like some ducks down of the, and then I have sidechaining from Shaperbox. And the reason why I like this like vocal chop thing is that if you listen to like the drop A here and going into the other part here, you can hear like everything is like changing a little bit. And I really like this like way of changing between sections in a drop, because then for the listener something interesting is happening. So I could just easily just have reused the same phrasing over, but then maybe people will get bored a little bit of the track. So yeah, that's the reason why I did this. Okay, so there is still like a lot of stuff to cover here with the vocals. I have this like vocal chop like MIDI pattern here. I just muted. And this is done in SFXs, and it's basically the same like vocal, the main vocal loop, and then I just put it into SFX, and it just automatically slices up the vocal sample into smaller bits. I did like a small amount of low passing in sampler, also adding like a little bit of echo delay that's built into the sampler, and then I basically just went into the piano roll and just tried to find small bits that just sounded nice. So these are like really like rhythmical stuff. There is like not like a full phrase, it's just like small vocal throws and hits and bits that really add something nice to the sound. And then being routed into a mixer track. And there is like some filtering just to move like extra of top end. Then I added a delay as well from FL Studio, and then some sidechaining, basically. So we can just listen to this together with Rest in a Drop. So you can really hear like those like small, like really fast, choppy ones here. Together with the drums and the bass and the mallets, it just adds like some extra movement to the track, and it's really, really nice. So let's move on to the next part, and this is like a vocal reverse. It's the same process as with the mallets, just taking a small snippet of the vocal, put a lot of reverb on it, and just bounce it to audio, reverse it. And it's really great for like these build-ups. Like between transitions, like try to do this with a lot of other elements in your own tracks to really make great transitions. You can also use it with drums as well. So now we can move on to the next part, and this is like these intro chops. I think I did the same thing for the main vocal. I just used the auto chopping function and just slicing it up into small bits and just rearrange it to make like a cool rhythmic groove thing. And I just wanted it to be like really like short, really repetitive, because I wanted to have it more like as a rhythmic thing in the intro to build up towards the build up and the main vocals down here. So let's look into processing. Again, some filter, but it's being used mainly for automation stuff here. And then I have like a delay as well, just to, again, add some more movement, some stereo effects. And then, yeah, for the low pass here. It's just slowly being introduced in the intro. And then right here, I just added like some automation of the wet input of the delay free, just to add like a tail to the intro drops here. Because then they blend a little bit better into the main vocal instead of stopping. Really, really nice effects. Okay, so we can move on to the last vocal thing that I have, and this is this vocal background thing. This is like really crazy in my opinion. I think it's another vocal sample from Splice that I just pitched up 12 semitones, and then I think I added also the little altar boy, and then I just bounced it to audio, and then I added to this mixer track here, and then I used Transgate from Kilohertz. This plugin is for free. You should definitely check it out. So it's just making like really stuttering stuff, stutter house. That's maybe like popular these days. And then following with like some delay. Again, I really love this delay from FL Studio. It's pretty easy to just mess around with. And then some EQing just to move a lot of like the low ends and also like the lower mids. And then also some of the high ends, because I have other vocal stuff that's occupying this area. And I just want this to have it like a more background kind of effect. And then lastly, I have sidechain from Shaperbox. And it's just working really well together with this other like. And you can just listen to like the drop here. It's sounding so amazing in my opinion. And when I found this sample on Splice, I just knew that it was going to fit well together with the rest of the elements. And you can listen to like the second build up, then I'm changing and using other stuff, and you can really hear like how these things are blending really well together. So they are basically like doing like this call and response thing, even though these are like two separate vocal samples. They just work really well together. And I think it's also a matter of like that I use the same processing on them. They sound a little bit more like joined together, in my opinion. So we can also like try to look at, because for the vocals, I also do the same thing with the rest of my elements. I route all of my vocal elements into a vocal bus. And for the vocal bus, sometimes I will also add some bus compression, but I didn't do this with this track because, yeah, I didn't feel like do it. Maybe I also forgot it. But I just added some EQ again, and also boosting this area because it was also lacking a little bit of information in this frequency range. And also again, making room for the bass and the kick drum. So yeah, that's it for the vocals. Okay, I totally forgot one element in the melodies, the instruments, and it's this Arpeggiator thing here. I think it's from also an Arturia plugin, but I just bounced this to audio as well. The only thing on the mixer channel is just an EQ to move high end and low end, and also like a little bit of this 570 hertz area. And I think it's like a little bit gritty, but it really works really well when you're going from one section into another. Just take a listen. It's like really low in the mix, but it still adds like groove and movement to the track, and I just love it. Okay, so now we have covered like all of like the main elements. All of the rest down here are the SFX. I don't want to go too much into depth with these because there's like a lot. Basically what I search for in terms of SFX are, I can split them into like some parts. There are those that are like crashes, sweeps and rises. I tend to use them like for rises. I have a lot here for like the build up, obviously. And then I have like some small like simple ones here to like for transition stuff, and downlifters as well, claps, and I like to use them between sections to really like introduce stuff in a more like smooth way. But then I have like a lot of these like saps, stabs. They are like, I think like UK garage inspired effects, but they just add like extra texture in the background of my drums and the other elements of the track. So let's take a listen. Okay, we can try one experiment. I can just mute all of my SFX sounds because I have them on the bus as well, and just listen to this drop without these effects. So you can hear like the groove is still pretty decent in my opinion, but it's still lacking like those details and character. And this is mainly what I look for in terms of finding these sounds. And I try to put them on places where they can like emphasize elements of the groove, like for the drum and for the bass. And then I tend to go crazy. I like to use foleys, like recorded sounds of people tapping a drum or opening a can of soda or whatever, because it just adds a sense of like organic vibes to the track. And that puts me to texture loops and field recordings. I really love to use like stuff like vinyl crackling. It might be a little bit low, but I think you might hear it if you're on headphones. Also had like somebody who's like doing footsteps in gravel for the intro, but it sounded nice. It just gives like that's it just adds like texture and warmth to the track. So yeah, that's also like stuff that I like to add a lot. And then I have like this like field recording that I recorded while being on vacation. And this is like I think it's a restaurant that I recorded like the ambient noises and just added like some heavy sidechaining and auto panning, and it just adds like some extra character to. It's actually used in the drop, so it's just sitting in the background. It's also just really low in volume, but I notice when it's not there. So again, it's just adding like small details to the sound. That's like my approach for using SFX sounds. So I think they shouldn't like dominate your track. They should rather support your track. So I don't want to have like a really crazy like sounding riser and sweep in my build-up. I want to have it there, but I still want to have like my other main elements to dominate like the track. So for instance, like I want to have like the main vocal to be present, and same with the drums, and also like the piano and the mallets. And then the riser effects and the sweeps can like support the emotion I'm trying to evoke, like building towards a drop. Okay, and then one last thing in terms of SFX, like just before a drop, I play a lot around with like just silence, because it grabs like the listener's attention. Like pulling out certain elements. Then I have like a fill here, and it just generates some more tension, in my opinion. You can see I did the same with the Arpeggiator and also the synth strings and also the mallets, but I still have like that reversed mallet effect, and it just makes the drops hit a little bit harder, in my opinion. And in terms of drops, we can touch upon the last thing that I have, and these are the automation on the master bus. So I have three things going on in terms of automation. I have some volume automation. It's just a standard volume plugin from FL Studio called Balance. And what I tend to do is actually draw out like the main like volume shape of the entire track. So for the intro, I want to have it like a little bit low on volume, and then building it up slowly. And then I'm building it downwards when the build-up is happening, because then you get the sense of like the drop hitting harder because you're reducing the volume just before the drop, and then the drop is at the normal level. So you think it's sounding like louder, but it's actually not louder. And then if we zoom in, I also do like the same thing in between these sections, just reducing the volume a little bit. And this is only like 10% reduction, even less, because I don't want to have it should be too obvious. It's more like just like a DJ effect, I would call it. I think it's basically what you do if you're on like a DJ mixer and just pull down the volume fader just before a drop or before an important section, and it's just to grab the attention of the listener. So you can see here, like then for the breakdown, also building down the volume and then building it upwards, building it down for the build-up, and then like repeat. And for the outro, just building it downwards. I think this is really great tool to add some kind of dynamic to your track, like in the whole, instead of everything just being the same volume. At least that's my opinion. Then I have another plugin here, and it's called Stereo by Kilohertz. Just gonna pull it up. And I think if you have watched any of my other like track breakdowns, you see this plugin popping up on the master. Basically what it does is that I just reduce the stereo width of the track, so it's going closer to mono just before the drop. And it also gives like a sense of everything being like bigger and more wide and massive when the drop hits. So if we just take a listen to it. Like a really like nifty trick to also add like a sense of the drop being a little bit bigger and more impactful. But also be careful not overdoing this, because if you move it like too close to mono, it's gonna sound a little bit strange to the listener. So I keep this at like 25% and 50% is the normal. So yeah, really cool tip to use. Then the last thing is I just have a reverb on the master, and this is only being used for the build-up. And it's more like to generate like that sense of everything being like a little bit more washed out in the build-up. So basically what I'm trying to do is like trying to make everything sound a little bit more like washed out, and then when everything hits, it's more like dry sounding. It was just an effect that worked for me. So yeah, that's actually it for the track. We can just look upon like my master, but it's basically just like 2 plugins. The first is Ozone 9, and what I do in Ozone is that for the EQ, I have like a high shelf here, just boosting the highs, and I think it's like 1 dB, even not 0.8 of gain, and then I just reduce like some of the really low with a low shelf, but I'm not cutting, I'm just reducing those lower frequencies. And then I use an imager just to make sure that everything below 150 Hertz is in mono. And then I have a maximizer just to drive some loudness. And then the last plugin is this tonal balance plugin from Isotope. Basically what this does, it creates like a EQ curve of different genres, so you can see like where your own like tonal balance is positioned. So you can see if there's something that's like a little bit like too high end in the frequency range, there's like a little bit too much high information, you can just reduce that. But you shouldn't just rely on this. I use this as a tool to see if I'm like in the right area. So we can just listen to it. So for me, like this is okay for me. I'm like not having too much bass. I'm not having too much highs. I have a lot of low mid information and also high mid information. There could be something like in this area here that's a little bit maybe too much, but I just like the sound of it and I don't want to like dive more into it. That's like my track breakdown of this emotional house thing. So I really hope you enjoyed it. Okay guys, that was it for this long breakdown of this emotional track idea that I made. If you want to get access to the full project, you can go to my membership site and download all of the content via the link in the description down below. I have also included the stem files if you don't have all of the plugins, and then you can just put it into your own DAW. If you like the video, it means so much to me if you will smash that like button or even subscribe to the channel. So I hope to see you in the next video. Take care, peace.